This session is unleashing the power of VR and eye tracking to ensure safe driving and working environments. Our speakers are Ken Fickler, founder and CEO from Gaize, a first of its kind real-time impairment detection platform. Also joining him will be Johan Boeven, Senior Director of Sales and Business Development from Tobii for this session. It will be an extraordinary exploration of the future. Please join me in welcoming Johan and Ken onto the stage.
Thanks, Tricia. Great to see everybody here again, and glad you made it all the way back to the back corner. This is room A, where all the fun stuff happens, as obviously. We're under the guard of the AWE psychedelic plant theme for the year, which seems fitting, since Ken will tell us more about the business of drug impairment testing and the work they're doing at Gaize. I'm from Tobii, and we have provided eye tracking technology for the XR space for many years now, and for research and various applications for decades. We see eye tracking as an enabling technology in many fields, including safety applications, training and simulation, education, and more. This is a year where we really see eye tracking coming into more and more headsets and being available for a large number of applications. And for me, it's been in the space of eye tracking for almost 20 years. It's really exciting to see how this technology has flowed through early stage research into actual headset implementations and now real world applications. So with that, super happy to have Ken here with me, and we'll see how actually to make a business and make the world a safer place with all these technologies.
Thanks so much, Johan. Hi, everyone. Ken Fickler, founder and CEO of Gaize. I'm very happy to be here today, and we are on a mission at Gaize to eliminate over 10,000 annual fatalities due to impaired driving and working. I want to start today with two stories, both of which are true. The first, I want you to imagine you're stopped at a stoplight in your car, fiddling with the radio, when all of a sudden you get crushed from behind with unbelievable force. Glass explodes all around you, and your car's frame buckles in two places. You've just gotten hit by an impaired driver. That happened to me in 2019 and is one of the driving forces behind my interest in this problem. The second story today, I want you to imagine that you're driving along the interstate. You get pulled over by a law enforcement officer. You're kind of going through the motions of the traffic stop, and they ask you where you work. And you say, oh, I work at a cannabis dispensary. And like that, the conversation changes, and they suddenly think you're a drug user and you could be impaired. And so they pull you out of the car. They put you through the standardized field sobriety tests. The officer decides that you're impaired, even though you're not. You haven't used cannabis in 24 hours. They take you back to the station, they do a blood draw. The blood draw finds that you have more THC in your body than the arbitrary state limit. You're charged with DUI, even though you were not impaired. That is also a true story. That story happened in Seattle, but that's happening all across the country today because of the lack of technology solutions to detect cannabis-impaired driving in particular. So this problem is really becoming very acute, obviously. We've got cannabis being legalized all across the United States as well as internationally. This map is actually out of date as of yesterday. Minnesota is the 24th state to legalize recreational access to cannabis. Obviously, simultaneously, we have this broadening societal acceptance of cannabis use, and THC users are becoming a protected class in many states. And what that means is that you cannot simply take adverse action against an employee based on the presence of THC in their body. So there are several states leading in this. California is one. This is a really, really important point, though, as we continue with this. So the real nature of the problem here is that unlike alcohol, THC cannot be simply measured in the body and have some experienced level of impairment derived from that number. You'll see here, I want to draw your attention to the pink line, THC concentration in the body. We've got the subjective high in the blue line. That is the high being experienced by the user. These lines do not look alike at all. And so this really, I hope, drives the point home. You cannot look at the amount of THC in the body and derive the experienced impairment. There have been many studies that have validated this point, including 2 that came out this month alone. So the current solution here for detecting active cannabis impairment are these track my finger eye tests that law enforcement officers have been doing for about 45 years. What we know is that there's signal there. We also know that humans are not particularly well equipped to conduct these tests or evaluate test results. So what we've done at Gaize is we've built a real-time impairment detection platform using a VR headset equipped with Tobii eye tracking sensors and powered by Tobii Acumen's eye tracking analysis suite. What we do is we run the exact same tests that law enforcement drug recognition expert police officers do in the VR headset entirely automatically. From that, we get eye movement data and we get really high quality video. We can then analyze the data on the back end to look for the same signs and symptoms of impairment that law enforcement look for using machine learning algorithms. We've built 3 separate software products. You can kind of see them there. That's how the platform works. In order to make sure that our product had the level of validity that we need in order to feel confident, have our customers feel confident, we had to do a clinical trial. We didn't do just any clinical trial. We did the world's largest clinical trial that's ever been done on cannabis impairment. We brought 350 people in a theoretically sober state. We actually caught a few that were not so sober. We then got them high using recreationally available cannabis, captured 4 additional eye movement readings throughout the course of their high. So we now have the world's largest data set of what cannabis-impaired eye movement looks like. We have been able to train our machine learning algorithms on that data set and validate it using the data set to recognize the signs and symptoms of impairment and do so very rapidly and extremely precisely. So this is an example of the types of things that we look for. So I'm going to draw your attention to the peaks and valleys of these charts here. So we've got sober here, impaired. This is actually alcohol, but it's very visually, easily understandable. And so what we're looking at here is, you can see that's a relatively smooth peak there, relatively bumpy there. So this is what's called nystagmus, and that's an involuntary twitching of the eye that happens when you're impaired on alcohol or other depressant drugs. Similar things we can look for in cannabis. Each class of drug has a unique way in which it impacts eye movement, and so we can look at the eye movement data we get out of these tests and know which category of drug you're impaired on. This is very, very accurate. We have an ideal platform in the VR headset to control the amount of light that enters the eye, control the stimulus with mathematical perfection, and so our product is extraordinarily accurate, much, much more accurate, in fact, than law enforcement police officers. The product was made extremely easy to use. Law enforcement is not a customer that is very technically savvy, and so we've gone to great lengths to make sure that the product is as simple as it could possibly be. It's also very quick. It takes about 6 minutes from the time you press the Start Test button to the time you get test results. It's non-invasive. We're just capturing eye movement. It's nothing that is even sort of proprietary. Your eye movement gets recorded 100 times a day all around you. You don't even realize it. It's portable. The platform is entirely portable. You can do it anywhere. And it's very data rich. We get location, time, date, user, headset, make, model, software version, all that. And most importantly, it's legal to use right now. So our business model is as simple as we could possibly make it. It's basically one annual fee based on the number of units you need. Our customers are using anywhere from a single unit to dozens of units, and basically the hardware is leased, so you're not committing to owning that hardware platform. That means we swap it out if a new platform comes forward. We think that's the best possible way to run that, and pretty large market for this technology, as you might imagine. So we've got 2 primary markets we're looking at. The first, B2G law enforcement sales. That's the one we've been talking about mostly. On the other side, there are many businesses with safety-sensitive workers, and these businesses need to maintain safe workplaces even with legal cannabis. I talked about briefly that THC users are becoming a protected class. So businesses in certain states can no longer simply THC test their employees and take adverse action, and nor would that be a scientifically defensible thing to do. So using our technology, these businesses can very precisely and very rapidly know if an employee is fit for duty when they enter the job site. And all of this is powered by Tobii Acumen. So I'm going to pass it to Johan to talk a little more about that.
Thanks, Ken. So the way Tobii enables the kind of applications that Gaize and other companies do is, first of all, we provide the hardware for eye tracking into headset. So the Pico headsets that Ken and his team are using and other various headsets use our technology to be able to measure where a person is looking. Then, given Tobii's experience, we have only over 20 years in providing various types of eye tracking solutions for research and enterprise uses outside XR as well. We have a huge knowledge about the use cases and what's really needed to analyze this kind of data. So that's why we've created Tobii Ocumen, a toolkit that enables software developers to easily access and make use of this type of data. It's used for observing human behavior in VR and provides also a recording framework to make it really easy to analyze and organize the data and get rid of the plumbing. And maybe most importantly, for many of these advanced applications is the level of scientific validation of the sensor data and that and the analytical quality of that. So in the Tobii Ocumen SDK or toolkit, there is a recorder and a data framework to record the data in a VR session. These are easy to use recorder plugins for Unity that you can use to record head movements, all the objects in the scene, all the meshes, all the surfaces, and then obviously the eye tracking data. So what you see here is a little sample scene with a Mars rover, and you have the hand positions from the controllers, you have the head position, and you have the red and green eye tracking data. And what it's looping through here is all the different types of data that is just plug and play out of the box, throw in your Unity project, saves it to a file, and then you can revisit it later at another place. So it's really a way of getting out of all the plumbing that can be needed if you're setting up an analytical application and need to record your session data. Then after recording, we know that eye tracking data is a very raw type of measurement of human behavior. Eye movements are very fast and have very what looks like noisy behavior. So there's huge value in getting standardized filters and a framework for running those quickly. And Tobii Ocumen both provides those pre-made filters and the framework, but what it does as well is that it enables a data scientist at the back end to work with the data and have a developer implement the recording in the applications. And those two people are quite often not the same, and making sure that they can work in sync with the same pipeline ensures that the data that you actually record is what you wanted and the data you'd get out is what actually happened. On the data side also, since we also provide the core technology, we can provide very good high quality data and ensure that you have the highest accuracy and scientific validation of the data. Plus, last but not least, we take care of a lot of the sort of the housekeeping of the system with eye movement, with eye tracking settings and calibration and so on to handle that subsystem. I think that's all for today. We do have plenty of time. There's nobody in after here as well, so we have time for some questions. Do look us up. Both Gaize and Tobii are easily found on those links. And for those who are around towards the end of the day, we have an open house up on the second floor in room 201 for anybody who wants to come out and try out some of these experiences live as well. So with that, thank you so much for coming, and see if we have some questions.
Thank you very much, Ken and Johan. That was an amazing presentation. Since we have a little bit of time, we will open up the floor for questions. If there are any questions, I think I have about 7 minutes to do questions. Anyone? I see a hand here. I'll bring you the mic.
Hi. I have a couple questions. Question number one is, would you be able to give us a description of what the user is seeing when they're being tested, when you're tracking their eye movements or trying to identify impairment?
Yeah, good question. So it's very, very simple. It's not a fun VR experience by any means. It's a little ball that moves across the screen at a prescribed rate of speed. We basically took the law enforcement training manual and programmed the test to run precisely according to that. The last test measures your pupil's reaction to light. So we expose your eye to 3 different light conditions, basically, and watch what happens and the rate at which it happens. And that's basically what it looks like.
And these light conditions come from the headset itself?
The light conditions do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically the screen turns, let's call it gray for room light condition, full black for black to simulate a black room, and then as bright white as we can make it to simulate the flashlight in the eyes.
Got it. And the second question, with the progression of newer technologies and headsets, how does Tobii address the implementation of in-headset eye tracking, such as like the MetaQuest Pro that already has eye tracking built in?
So what was the question? How we provide technology to these?
Yeah, or I guess my question is, as headsets develop, and they'll probably have eye tracking built into the headsets.
Yes.
How will you address that in the future?
So Tobii is one of the leading providers of exactly that technology. So the Pico headset that is out that Ken and Steam are using has a Tobii eye tracking system in it. The PlayStation VR 2 that came out a couple of months ago also has Tobii eye tracking in it. So we are an enabler of the hardware manufacturers and provide technology to them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
in the
Any
back.
other questions here? I'll bring the mic to you.
Thank you. Are any SDKs being made available that include signal processing? So let's say for impairment, or for if you're trying to see whether someone is alert or not, that you could kind of drop into a augmented reality solution that someone was building, right? So for a construction worker or somebody who's doing an intense job, is there an SDK you could drop in that essentially follows eye tracking and determines their performance or alertness, et cetera?
You're touching on future state technology for us. We're definitely interested in moving in that direction. We just launched this platform that we've built in February, so we're still early days on that. That's very much a direction that we're moving now.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Next.
Does the eye tracking technology require active illumination?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
which is also part of what's integrated into these headsets. But it's infrared, so it's invisible but active and very low power.
Thank you. We have a question in the back.
Thank you. First of all, I'm a little bit sad that you left us out whenever you mentioned examples of companies that use your products. We are also integrating Tobii's eye tracking in our products over at Pimax. Really great
True.
eye tracking.
True.
So I have a question about your specific implementation of the Gaize system with law enforcement. How do you resolve the issue of motion sickness and disorientation that many users and many people do experience when putting on a VR headset in the first place, plus the loss of balance and coordination that comes with inebriation and the possibility of, the legal liability if a user were to have an incident of seizure or fall down and bump their head?
Yeah.
How have you guys dealt with the potential risk factors?
All great questions. So what we've done, these tests run without any degrees of freedom. So when you're looking at it, it's like you're looking at a TV screen. So we eliminate almost all of the VR-induced sort of loss of visual acuity that way. We also require that our participants are seated before they take the test. If you're impaired, you put the headset on, you lose sort of your visual frame of reference. It does get a bit confusing. And we've definitely had people that can even start to sway in chairs and things depending on what they're on. So it's It's a challenging issue, but being seated and sort of being walked through the process by the test administrator seem to be good solves for us so far.
And just one more question. This Gaize system that you're doing, is this only to be sold as a complete system, or do you also plan to make the SDK and the software available to the headset manufacturers that are making use of your modules in their products?
Depends on the use case, but yeah, we definitely want to get to a point where we can have SDK available that could be integrated into other products. There's some emerging use cases like driver monitoring cameras, things like that we're really interested in. So yeah, we're very much interested in moving that direction, but for now it's all in one platform that, each piece is sort of integral to it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I lied, I do have one more.
And then we have time for one more, so let's wrap up. Thanks.
Thank you. How well does your system deal with people who have visual impairments such as astigmatisms, lazy eyes, or other similar issues?
Yeah, there are a ton of different ways that your eyes can move abnormally. There are some edge cases that are very uncommon that we're still working on for things like strabismus, which is a lazy eye. You have to be able to track the stimulus equally with both eyes. And we check for that during the calibration process. And if you're not able to track the stimulus equally with both eyes, our platform is not a fit. We're just not going to get the types of signal we need in order to process a good outcome. And so there are a series of things that you're sort of precluded from using our system if you have. And so photosensitive epilepsy is a good example. We don't want people having seizures. It's not really a flashy experience, but we just don't want the liability exposure. So that's another one. Prosthetic eyes, another good example. We've had several people try to sneak through with a prosthetic eye, and we catch them every time. So it just doesn't work that way.
But it does handle people who have a lazy eye.
No, if you have an uncorrected lazy eye, your eyes don't equally track the stimulus, and therefore you'd not be able to go through the test. If you have corrected lazy eye, we had a guy last week actually we tested with a corrected lazy eye and he was fine.
Okay. I was testing out your system earlier with our own product, and I have a mildly lazy left eye, and I found that I really had to concentrate to line them up in order for it to properly calibrate and function.
Sure.
So I was curious about that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I think we have time for one question, and then we'll wrap up. And I promised you. One question.
Hey, so I just had a quick question for Gaize. So you mentioned that there's 98% accuracy. Can you kind of expand on that? Is that false negatives, false positives? Because looking at a number like 98 makes me think 2 out of 100 people are going to be either missed or falsely accused.
Yeah, so we have basically 98% accurate at detecting the same indicators of impairment that law enforcement do. There are edge cases that we're still working on, like I said earlier, but so that's for each indicator of impairment. There are 6 different tests that we conduct, so each has 1 or more indicators of impairment that we look at, and so each of those is at 98% or above. That is a detection of a true positive, and so there are about 2% false positives that we are detecting that we're actively working to eliminate from our system. What I'll note, though, is that our product is intended to be, at this stage at least, used as a screening product, so it would not be the only line of defense. It's intended to be, this is the first thing that you would do if you're a business owner, you suspect someone may be impaired on the job site, or you're a law enforcement officer on the side of the road. This has a much higher probability of catching someone that is impaired and driving around than an average street cop that's got, a couple hours of impaired driving training, and that's it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. That was the last question. Thank you, Ken and Johan, for this great presentation. We will now go to break, but please join me in giving them a wonderful thank you. Clap, yes. I learned a lot, actually, just in terms of, eye tracking and whatnot. So please join us back this afternoon. We will be back at 1:25 here for AI and XR, the game-changing fusion of learning. Thank you very much, everyone.